sounded pretty exciting. And he said, oh, well, what kind of topics would you want to talk about? And for me, there was absolutely no question but that I wanted to talk about tech for good. And I'm actually not sure which slide I have next. So let me just, here we go. So this is me. So I've worked at Softwire, which I know a few of you know already. I've worked at Softwire for 20 years. So I'm kind of a lifer at Softwire. That's what it should really say in my first bullet. And we make software for other organizations. And we've always focused on making software really well and making sure that we are all having a great time while we're doing it. So actually that we're having a great time, our clients are having a great time, and we're using that energy to make the best possible software. And something that I've really come to appreciate over 20 years is that where there is real purpose behind the technology and where that is really driving change that benefits the world, that's when we get even more energy and can produce, essentially produce better tech and have a more enjoyable time while we do it. So when James said, what do you want to talk about? Very, very obvious to me. This is my favorite type of event because I basically get to ask all of you all the questions that I want to know the answers to. So I'm really, really looking forward to this event. There's two main strands to where it would be very valuable for me and therefore I presume for a wider audience as well to discuss tech for good. And that is both how can we put ourselves and our organizations in a position where the tech that we are making is going to impact positively on the world long term. And then the other one is how can we engender this sense of purpose and this spirit of this human spirit that we all have, that so many workplaces seem to want to just beat out of you. How can we engender this in whatever work that we're doing? So those are the two broad topics that I want to cover today, and there are lots of facets to all of that. So I'd like to start by getting everyone's thoughts on what is tech for good. Freddie already asked the question in his introduction. What does it mean? We've been trying to answer the question at Softwire because we're a very engineering-led organization. I'm an ex-engineer, almost all the rest of the board are all ex-engineers, and we like to have things defined and we like to know what they are. And actually, the closest we've been able to come is using the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which we have come across a lot of other organizations using these too, which reassures us that we're not alone. But I'd really love to hear other perspectives. Shall we try using hands up and see if that works rather than just chatting? Or we can try just, let's try that first and then we can try just chatting afterwards. And I also am totally, James assures me I'm totally authorized to pick on people if people don't volunteer. So just to give you all fair warning. And Rebecca, please start us off.
Oh God. Enthusiastic. I mean, I'd say that Tech for Good really is solving a solution with technology that serves an ultimate positive purpose. So, you know, I understand what you're saying about mapping to SDGs, and that can be a really good way of kind of measuring that impact. But then what can you do to help organizations to measure their impacts against SDGs or their technology against SDGs, which is part of actually what one of the organizations I represent does. So yeah, you're right, it can be really complicated because it can go right down to a granular level, but I think ultimately it's about serving a purpose and using technology and technological solutions as they continuously emerge for that end goal.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I'm also interested in the straw man question of what doesn't count as tech for good, right? Actually, anything could be called a purpose. Turning up to work to make money is a purpose.
Mm.
So I'm very interested in that as well. And I think for me, that clearly is outside the scope, right? That's the business that we're used to. And Tech for Good is about doing things differently. Danny.
I was just going to add one word before purpose, which is just social. So, you know, if I think about what I want my next role to be, and people go, well, I assume you're going to want a charity job. I'm like, I don't need to work in a charity, but whatever I do has to have social purpose. And I just found that by saying that expression covered it for me personally. And I mean, Rebecca, your background's, you know, consultancy on sustainability, and it's about measuring that purpose. And I was actually just looking up B Corp and seeing how they define it, because ultimately that's what they do, is they say, show me that your organization has social purpose in these ways. And the whole measurement of those things is now becoming really important. Otherwise, it's was it greenwashing is probably one expression, or you know, from an environmental perspective, but it's social washing ultimately, kind of saying, well, it's like every organization making a comment about Black Lives Matters or International Women's Day, but how many of those organizations are true to their core to those purposes, and many will be, or many intentions, and how many are not. So
right,
look at B Corp, but I think social purpose is key.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks, Danny. Now, I think Ian did a manual hand up. Did you, Ian?
Yeah, I did, because I'm joining from a browser on my work laptop, and I've realised that it doesn't have the raise hand function. But probably just one build on the last point. I think for me, because when I describe my job, I often have to explain what I mean by tech for good, because I think one of the difficulties with it is it's so wide, it's so amorphous. But I generally just explain it as tech that either delivers a positive societal impact or environmental impact. So I think historically, actually, I think tech for good has often been more in the societal bucket, but I think, you know, now with climate change, I think incorporating climate impact as well is crucial to that. But on one hand, I love the term tech for good, but I also kind of hate it because of that problem, in the sense it is so broad, and so therefore I think over time, I think you know, social tech, climate tech, those sort of more specific terms, I think, are going to be more useful around creating action in the space. And if you've got tech for good as a kind of capture-all, that's great. But at the same time, when you think about what's the opposite of tech for good or tech for bad, I mean, nobody, you know, there is tech for bad out there, as we know, but it's not really a thing either. So, you know, it's important though to keep it simple. So if you've got that idea, for me, if you've got a societal or climate focus in what you're doing, then that's got to be delivering a bit of positivity. But I think the other underpinning bit is, for me, around ensuring that the other term I like to use is profit with purpose. So the idea is that you can be purposeful in what you're doing and deliver positive impacts, but at the same time, you know, the profit, money side of, and it's important, you know, that, you know, people see this as a commercial opportunity as well as a actual societal or environmental benefit.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. All right, let's go to Julie and then to Silky.
Well, bearing in mind that I come from a totally non-tech background, and a lot of the language being used is very new to me. But when, over this last year, when we've moved more things online, have done things remotely, have you tried to use technology in different ways, or in ways we wouldn't have realised we could use it before? One of the things that we've realised is it breaks down barriers. So I've no doubt there are also other barriers that still need to be broken down. But because we've often done things face to face, so as I say, assessments or a community, you know, we have a community of families and young people, all of that's always been face to face. But what this last year has made us do really is to do things remotely, to use Zoom and different things. And I know this isn't tech per se, I understand that, but actually what it's done is it's allowed It's allowed us to engage and provide support to people, and it's broken down geographical, financial, social barriers that we wouldn't otherwise have been able to do. So I see that kind of tech for good being able to break down those barriers, because you don't have to, for example, travel somewhere to do something. You don't have that financial cost. We had people participating in this online festival from the northeast of Scotland and from Jersey. There's no way they would have kind of come to London or whatever if we'd done something like that. And social barriers. I was very taken by Ashley and the fact, you know, she's working with people who are neurodiverse. For some people, going into a school, if they've got school phobia and we're holding an event in school, that's already a barrier. You're not going to get them, you're not going to get them there. So we've been able to break down barriers through what we would call technology. Might not be what others call technology. And I see that as being tech for good.
That's such an amazing point, Julie. And actually, I find that, you know, we at Software, being so immersed in tech all day, you know, all day, every day, we sometimes just forget that actually a lot of tech is just good in itself. Like, our lives are actually better and richer because of sometimes very simple pieces of technology. So yes, thank you very much. And Silky.
Yeah, hi there. So although I don't have the UN sustainability kind of you know, manifesto in front of me, but having worked with some kind of lobbies within the UN for AI governance, I felt that there is this, although we talk about tech for good, but there are a lot of silos if you look at the landscape. So there's this corporate side who have CSR funds and really amazing individuals trying to drive something, and you know, and if you go above and beyond that, probably the products themselves have this tech for good propositions. But look at the unfortunately, you know, someone said, you know, we don't like to, you know, we shouldn't be thinking about only charities for doing tech for good, but in the sense that sometimes you have these, you know, focused startups, which I have personally seen having amazing purposes, and they have to kind of, you know, it's an uphill task for them to get the funds, to get the representation within UN, for example, in those working groups, to be able to channel their on the ground realities, their perspectives there. And many of these tech for good startups are kind of like Julie would appreciate, are volunteer led. So you can't always, you know, have the funds to pay. So you probably have interns and people who are eager and enthusiastic, but you do not have the funds to kind of get a more experienced SME for that. So although there are funds which are supposed to be for CSR within the corporates, the first problem is there is less of partnership between the exclusive tech for good sector, individuals, organizations working in enabling you know, good purposes by way of tech, and these funds. And the second problem is there are good kind of pathways to be part of the UN circle of governance for emerging tech, for example, AI. That's my experience, but it's a difficult task to be part of those, to have your voice heard as a collective, unless you are representing a bigger corporate giant. So these are the problems. Kind of, this is not, I think, the main topic, but this is something which I felt was kind of not addressed in the whole landscape. Yeah. If you look at tech for good, and I would love to hear from you, Zoe, because you know, you're helping out Stephen and someone else also here. I don't recall the name, sorry. So do you see those challenges when you're trying to create a product which is really for the first time, or which has an amazing proposition, emerging tech, and how do you put the governance piece and specifications in place? So yeah, that's my point. It's a point rather than, I didn't answer your question, but that is something which is a topic.
You asked me another one. which is brilliant, right? This is a discussion, and actually you have spelt out something that very much is a challenge for us and very much is behind why I want to help Software focus on tech for good. And by tech for good, I do mean profit with purpose rather than CSR. So we already have a very active CSR team. Our employees are very committed to CSR and giving back. However, there is always a limit on how much we can give back. And the absolute maximum limit is the amount of money we make, which actually goes down if we spend all our time giving back, right? So my vision is that if we are delivering on, as Danny said, social purpose through our for-profit work, we are delivering more value with no limit on scaling. So yeah, so that's my perspective. I do just want to come to Freddie and then Ashley, and then we'll move on to the next question.
Yeah, so
you're still on. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, I've got to. I'm desperately trying people not to say you're on mute. I'm trying to avoid that word. Those words. I think you said it. Focus on startups. I think I love your expression of profits with purpose, and we moved MSOL into an ecosystem called Sustainable Workspaces, and there I met loads of other founders who just blew me away. I thought we were pretty good, but oh my God, some of the founders who've built some amazing technologies is just humbling to see. And what is lovely about success around that is they haven't sold their tech in the beginning. They just built good businesses because they're passionate about what they do. And then the tech sort of follows and the delivery follows. And I think what is really, really important is those founders are clubbed together to support each other, because, you know, we talk about B Corp and writing things in articles. They're really difficult things to achieve, but and you can't really do it in isolation. So you've got to be doing it and copying other people and copying best practice. But I do feel really inspired by working with entrepreneurs who don't actually sell the technology, but build great businesses and let the businesses sustain themselves and grow the number of people. Because the more people they can recruit and build in their organizations and survive as an entity, then we start having radical change. And certainly we've noticed that in our ecosystem as we build sustainable businesses that really drive that agenda. Our job as entrepreneurs is to convert the technology into usability, so people don't really think about it as being behavioral change. It's sort of osmosis of how this thing occurs. And so I think ecosystem for me and like-minded individuals just creating things that survive is really, really quite crucial. And certainly early stage companies in the climate tech and the clean tech and the, find it really hard to get the funding because we're not fintech. And London, just everything goes to fintech, and the stuff we do is just sort of like bottom of the pile. And we go, actually, no, we are really good. We will make money one day, but like it's sort of not as compelling as maybe some other businesses. So it's really difficult to get your voice heard. And but I think we are recruiting more and more talented individuals who are coming into the sector wanting to play ball and not go to the bigger companies.
Yeah, great. And we'll come back to that at the end, actually, this idea of how do we raise the profile of tech for good and how do we capitalize? Because I feel very strongly that that young people are demanding more from where they work, and that will, if we can harness that will give a big advantage to tech for good. As people read the articles about Goldman Sachs and say, why would I work there? Why, anyway, or maybe that's just my perspective. Ashley.
Hi. It's some really interesting points you've raised there, Freddie, with the purpose is kind of set, and it's the technology that is the kind of, it's almost the driving force behind the purpose, and how everything kind of formulates around that. It's definitely how I think around Passio. And I love the point you raised there, Julie, around barriers, because how Passio would think about building technology is that not that we just build technology that includes people, but we aim to build technology that doesn't exclude people. e.g. technology that doesn't create barriers, because disability is created when you put impairment plus barriers. And so if you remove those barriers, the person's disability is reduced. Tech for good, I think for me is, it's not just about creating social impact. It's about really understanding the core root of the problem and building solutions that tackle the core root of the problem, so that it prevents kind of greenwashing and appearing that it looks like something that's really on the surface tech for good, rather than ultimately solving the core issue. And other things that Passio have been quite fortunate about is that we haven't ever had to take investment because we were worried that it would compromise our purpose. So we've been very strict about growing organically, so it's been a little bit slower in that sense. But we also decided to hire people based on their sense of purpose and their purpose alignment, rather than their skills. So, for example, one of our top engineers at the moment, he spent 10 years as a senior policy advisor in Westminster, and now he's a trained software developer. So he comes with a whole host of diverse experience, which is really useful to have different perspectives and understanding root causes of issues and how we can think about things differently and about policy and government when we're deploying them at the same time. So yeah, that's my personal take.
Yeah, that's super important. Thanks so much, Ashley. And actually, it's something that I thought when you did the introduction to Passio, actually, it's another layer to making tech for good, is actually making the tech itself part of the, the way you build the tech, doing that in a good way, as opposed to just thinking about the outcome. So let's move on and have a chat about how can you drive purpose in your organizations? And I would actually love to start with, sorry, I've now got my slides full screen and I can't see anyone anymore. Right, hold on. Right, now I'm back. I'd actually love to start with Danny, because I felt that your description of people working with and within Anthony Nolan as sometimes not appreciating the purpose of the organization, that sounds like a very, it just sounds like a great place to start, because I think that we have a similar challenge at Softwire in terms of we have so much free food. No one sees the free food anymore. It's just, we're all used to living in this land of unlimited chocolate biscuits, and we don't even see that we live in it anymore. And I think that obviously we are all trying to be using our personal skills and our organizations to affect good in the world, but we want to get the benefit of that from our teams as well, and have that drive our teams as well.
So yeah, thank you. I think I'll rephrase it a little bit, which is that if asked, everyone is really in tune with the purpose of the organization and they really believe in the values, and that works well, but it's not translating into that happiness or joy of creation, of work, of delivery. So to give a very relevant example, I know that Softwire will measure the happiness of your own staff and the projects, how much they enjoy the projects that they're working on. And I know in the past, at least, the Anthony Nolan projects have scored very highly, if not at the very top, because the people who have joined that are going, this is amazing, rather than working on dongle widgets, I'm now working on really complex DNA analysis to help save the lives of people with blood cancer. This is brilliant. And I think, yeah, the mismatch is exactly as you gave a good example about the free food, is for them now, if they take a step back, yes, it's brilliant, but the day-to-day job, they don't necessarily feel as necessarily fulfilling. And so if surveyed, do you really enjoy your job? And then that's kind of gone away. It kind of makes people a bit more sticky to a degree. They stay, but actually at the end of the day, if they feel stressed or they don't feel like they're growing, then they'll leave. We had a few recently actually who have left, and They go, the passion is amazing, you know, the purpose is amazing, they like the teammates, but they didn't feel they were growing, or they felt they were being stretched too thinly, and those kind of things. So I think it's only goes so far. I can't remember, apologies, who it was that mentioned about younger people having a choice. I think it might have been yourself, actually. But, you know, younger people have a choice. If there's a skills gap, then those data scientists can choose wherever they want to work. And invariably, they're more likely with the younger generation to want to work with an organization with social purpose. Things have kind of changed a little bit. And also, if those organizations can have profit with purpose and can pay not banking level, but pay reasonable salaries, then it becomes a differentiating factor for employers. As in, I've got to give my employees some purpose, otherwise they're not going to want to work for us. So I think the last thing I'll say is, I think that there's currently this spectrum from charity, which is, you know, zero profit, mostly living on handouts, trying to do good in the world, and it's a massive uphill battle, through to the other extreme of corporate that just makes loads of cash by drilling oil wells, or, you know, burning children, or whatever they do. And I think this middle space, which is starting on one side, is kind of charities becoming social enterprise and being able to generate their own revenue rather than relying on handouts, not hangouts, to Google. And on this side is that corporation becoming a B Corp, and not specifically a B Corp, but having more purpose, more good ingrained into their measurement, into their governance. And I hope very much that middle space, where social enterprise meets B Corp, starts to become the dominant space overall, and that it might hurt charities. And I think, you know, charities need to reinvent themselves and figure out how to generate income, really, so they can continue to do the good things that they do. And corporates ultimately will find it harder and harder and harder to survive, where money suddenly stops to go down that direction, investment stops to go down that direction, customers, employees, and eventually starts to push people to that middle.
Yeah, amazing.
Long answer, and definitely deviated from your question, so sorry.
But no, but for me, again, it set out a vision of the future. Wouldn't it be amazing if, rather than doing achieving social purpose as an organization being a differentiator, it was a differentiator the other way? It was like something people expected from their job, and you know, because it was so widely offered. But we can all continue working towards that.
And it will be just a social pressure. I very much hope will be. It used to have to go and find a non-smoking area. Now you have to go and find a smoking area, and it just will over time. It will, especially if the money, the customers, the employees all start to vote in that direction.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. So anyone who's got any good examples or bad examples, I suppose perhaps not even bad examples, but challenges around, you know, driving teams with purpose, please do put your hand up, either physically or in the app. Oh, Ian, you can do it virtually. You must feel complete.
Yeah, I ditched the work PC and got the Mac from downstairs, and it's a lot better. Yeah, I mean, I think just one thing, what's really important, and what I'm hearing as well, which a lot of people are saying is, and if I take BT for example, you know, our purpose in the organization is we connect for good. So we've got 3 words, which is in a very clear, short purpose. But I think what becomes a challenge in a company where you've got over 100,000 employees is how do you get people to understand that? How do you get people to work behind it? And it's incredibly hard to do that. So, but I think one of the points is that as long as they are just more than words on a PowerPoint slide, and it is things that the senior management talk about, they deliver, they drive into the organization, they set targets around it. So for example, in BT, you know, we have clear remuneration targets where people are targeted on supporting
our digital skills initiatives at board level and at a senior management level, the same when it goes to our climate action. So it's kind of, you have to have the vision, you have to have the buy-in, but you also have to try and set targets against it as well to create the action and measure it somehow. Otherwise, it all becomes quite meaningless. So it is, you know, we've probably got poles apart. You know, I'm from a 100,000 organisation with over about 100,000 employees. Got small companies here, but I think it'd be the same in a small company. I think it's like Daniel was saying, you can get people who buy into it, but at the same time, you know, they still want to do different things, and you just need to let people try and sort of express themselves within the what that purpose can be as well, and sort of help that grow in the organisation.
Yes, that's a really good point. And actually, I think having worked at Software, I was the 9th employee, so we were really tiny when I joined. And I think sometimes it can even feel harder in a tiny organisation because there's so much to be done all the time, and everyone's doing like 10 different jobs and rushing to get everything done. And if it's not set in stone and measured, it's very easy to fall by the wayside. Brilliant. Let's go to, I'm sorry, I didn't see who had their hands up first. So let's go to Alice and then Julie, and then we'll go on to the final question.
Sure. So I just wanted to add that, you know, in terms of targets and what has been mentioned already, in terms of people have personal goals in lives as well as, you know, like purpose that they want to achieve for their organizations. And we learned it the hard way. So obviously at first we tried, you know, objectives, key results framework to evaluate our work and make sure that whatever we do in this company is actually, you know, benefiting like our larger cause and our larger purpose as an organization, which is about helping vulnerable people. But then we realized that we are totally overlooking our employees that might have some personal ambitions in their lives. They want to build a career. You know, maybe today they're working for AI for good, tomorrow they want to work for Facebook. You know, how can we help them, you know, achieve this as well? So we wanted to kind of like complement the OKR framework with this new kind of idea of personal goals and personal ambitions. And like it actually helped us achieve a lot better understanding for sure of what our team wants. And because we are driven largely by product people, and they're all focused on creating really impactful products out there, the products that people will remember, you know, they want to be the next Steve Jobs type of people, which is like very normal. And like, what can you do with that? You just have to deal with it. So our job is now like to also move them closer to this personal ambition. And we try to help them, you know, build this map of, you know, how to achieve this goal in the, you know, short term, medium term, long term. So even though we are like, we accept it as a kind of like a norm that, you know, they're going to stay with us as long as they can, but eventually they will outgrow their role and they will have to move somewhere else. So we just want to be that springboard that basically allows them to become something that they want to become in, you know, a longer period of time. So yeah, this is something that we try to do in AI for Good for sure.
Yeah, amazing. And if you can, all organizations are about that intertwining, aren't they, of organizational purpose and personal purpose. You can't get away with it. It's how we link together. Julie.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's just hearing comments from obviously very different organisations to what we are, because we are based a lot on lived experience. So and that's really important for us. So we're a membership charity who are living the through the kind of concerns and issues and experiences that we're trying to help, and all of our staff and all of our trustees have got that same lived experience. So you've got that kind of common goal almost, because you are all you all know what you're talking about, and so from that point of view, you've all got that common purpose of trying to find solutions to problems and concerns that we all understand. So it's that kind of shared purpose almost. So I found that quite interesting, that people might be working somewhere, or you might have, especially with Ian with his however many employees, and it's really interesting because in a small charity where everybody's got that lived experience, you just wouldn't have that. And secondly, you know, we've got certain values, and it's easy to have values and you can stick them on your website. But for me, as chief executive, it's about reinforcing that every day in what we do. And so in decisions that we're taking, it's about referring back to what are our strategic objectives, what is our vision and our mission, and what are our values. You know, when we have to make decisions about something, we do it in line with our values. And I think from a kind of a leadership point of view, it's really important that we do that and that we take that lead. And so it isn't just something that's, as I say, stuck on the website or in some marketing material or something like that, but we live it basically, and we do that actively.
And that's how people really know what people always know what the real values of an organization are, and they're not necessarily what's written down. So I'd love to hear from Rob, and then after that, let's move to, I want to try and combine the last question with a kind of wrap up.
Zoe, I also raised my hand, but this is a comment to Zoom.
Oh,
that this
yes,
iconography, and without contrast, if you use a kind of brownish shade of hand, anyways.
It's matching your curtains.
Oh yes,
there's a background of your curtains like matches a hand colour.
Brilliant. Go on then, jump in, Silky. I'm very sorry to miss you, and then we'll hear from Rob, and then we'll go to wrap up.
No, I'll not take too long. I just wanted to talk about some of the points here. I absolutely agree with what Alice said and what Danny said about how kind of with each generational changes, the perceptions change and everything else. And so I'll just like to add something tangible here. It's about if people have purpose and they haven't got the kind of psychological safety from their leadership to go and kind of invest that time from their day work to do something. It could be like, really working for a charity, or to tinker with the tech and do something more meaningful. So in my organizations, the teams I led, we felt that although I was making provisions for, once in 2 months, we would have a hackathon in a certain region, and that'll give people time to tinker. But that was just only about the things we do as a company about our products, and it was very, very focused to the business purposes. And we took a leaf from that example that people, when you're given that psychological safety to go and invest time in tinkering, maybe if we give them CSR days to use however they want to in a year, and not necessarily they don't have to be a Ned to actually earn that actually really created a happiness questions. And I've always tried to kind of create a balance and create that provision in my teams if we can, to show more it's not just branding and those mission and vision statements. Actually on the ground you are giving people something more on a working day, and so that's just one point.
Absolutely, yeah, and using all of the employee, not just one very limited part of them. Rob.
So Zoe, I mean, you asked about sort of challenges in Tech for Good, and I guess just sort of from my own personal experience, a big challenge that I can kind of identify, I guess, coming from sort of more of an engineering or kind of technical background, is that I think when you try to do Tech for Good, or you try to do something that has a positive impact, the problem is sort of harder in a sense, and the rubber kind of hits the road. It's sort of more real, and there's more at stake. And I think that leads to particular kind of pressure, particularly on like delivering technical output, because, if you make a mistake in your code and you're just trying to make money, like that's one thing. But if you're a conscientious person who's sort of going after Tech for Good in the first place, and you're dealing with something that's hopefully like actually really impacting someone's life, and you make a mistake in that context, like it can be serious. So it's obviously, you know, Quro is a healthcare company, so it's literally life and death in our case. That's kind of an extreme example, but I'm hearing a lot of other kind of applications here as well, which if something goes wrong, because you are trying to do something that will really impact someone, you know, it's kind of more dire in a sense, or the stakes are higher. So I do see that stress and that sort of pressure to kind of get it right, coupled with the fact that probably people who are interested in tech for good have, like, you know, a degree of conscientiousness that kind of multiplies that as well. I do see that as a particular challenge, particularly if we're talking about, like, you know, I guess the sort of tech in tech for good.
Yeah, a super important point, right? Actually, I was saying there's this extra energy, how do we harness it? But actually, what if there's too much? And actually, people are more risk of burning out, because when you're doing something, I think it's something that is being talked about a lot right now, about people burning out in the NHS, because there's so much work for them to do. You know, if it's there and you know you can do it, I think the temptation to burn out must be a lot higher than if you're working on something that you literally want to turn up and cash a check. Thank you all so much. I'd just like to ask for us to finish quickly by maybe if everyone can share like takeaways that they have from today. And also, because we didn't quite get onto the last question of how do we raise this? How do we work towards this world where tech for good is the norm and people stand out if they're not working towards social purpose? Then please like feed that in as well. We might not quite have time to get around everyone. We've got about 10 minutes. So please put your hands up and I'll try and go in the order people put. I'll try and watch for when people put their hands up. My biggest takeaway, and it seems so crazy because it's not like it's a phrase I haven't heard before, but the phrase social purpose has really struck me today, because actually everything we do is about human beings and about other human beings. And I think so many people, particularly outside tech looking in, think tech is about machines or efficiency, and it's not. And as people, our meaning comes from other people. So I'm definitely going to be talking about social purpose from now on. Okay, Danny.
Okay, so I really liked, oh, sorry, my hand went down and then up again. I really like Ashley's point about don't exclude people through bad design, and I'm paraphrasing really badly there, but effectively be good in your design, even if it's not for good, it's just for general consumer. Don't exclude people, knowingly or unknowingly exclude people. Yeah, I think, you know, that's a key takeaway. I think to your point, Zoe, about the NHS and burnout, charities are terrible at prioritization, because this can save lives and this can save lives. Which one shall I do? You can't not do this because it will save lives or children or something. It makes it really, really hard. And we need to be more robust, more commercial, and just kind of go, well, what's the value? So the measuring that impact. So saying social impact is one thing, or social purpose, but then getting those metrics right, I just think are key. If you can measure it, you can demonstrate it, and then you can grow it.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you. Rebecca.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with Danny, and I agree with you as well, Zoe. I think there's been so many interesting points raised today that I'll be taking away. But one that really struck home for me, and I know I enthused about it in the chat, was Alice's comment on, you know, how do we embed purpose by paying attention to what individuals' purposes and ambitions are as well, because that's a big part of how you bring them on the journey. And it's something that I'm going through at the moment, trying to help with a communications challenge at one of the organizations I help. I think my answer to how do we achieve tech for good is, with my kind of systems change hat on, is to really implore people to think about design thinking from the beginning, because tech for good always has good ambitions, but actually sometimes it can have adverse effects. So, you know, if you're developing a software solution, how are you hosting it? You know, are those, you know, where you're hosting your data in the cloud, is that actually run sustainably? If you're producing a physical product, have you thought about the waste aspect of that and how you can create a circular economy around it? So I think we have to think about these things as a circle. And that's really how tech will be for good, not just in the way that we intend, but perhaps in the ways that we haven't thought about.
Yeah, amazing. I love that point about circles and cycles, and actually that when things work best, they work as a cycle, not as a straight line from A to B. Absolutely. All right, we've got plenty of time for a few more people to just chime in and share takeaways, or even I'm very happy to hear challenges you still have. If you're like, yeah, well, we've had a great talk, but you know what, I still have this challenge. If you're taking away your same challenge you brought with you, I'm happy to hear that, as well as just the great solutions from other people.
Put it in a chat, but I think what Rebecca's just said is the cusp of it for me, which is it's not a bolt-on, which is why I kind of, like I said at the start, I kind of hate the term tech for good, because then it feels like an additional thing rather than something that's embedded right from the start. And you've got terms like responsible tech, you've got responsible capitalism, all these terms kind of go around in the same place, but it is almost kind of, unless it's actually there at the start in the product design, and then, you know, people thinking about circular economy, all these bits, you know, there's important unintended consequences of the tech I'm developing, all those things. It's kind of, it's in more how it gets developed and built is what's most important. And she said it about 1 billion times better than I just have, so that's why I use that quote as much as you can.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And actually that also speaks to Judy's point from earlier, that the values, if our values are not influencing our decision making and how we take decisions all the way through the organization, then they're not really our values. Alice.
So I really liked what Ashley said, and to be honest, in my case, like usually what I'm struck by is like when something makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable, and like what Ashley said about, you know, neurodiversity and making sure that, you know, we don't make technologies that are exclusive, you know, to people that are average, you know, standard users. I think it's like really important for us to think about accessibility, not only from the, you know, access to internet or connectivity point of view, but also like, you know, in terms of you know, mental difficulties, you know, to use some sort of technology, especially like thinking about, you know, social networks and, you know, how it's super overwhelming, especially right now with all that, you know, political stuff or like fake news, or like, you know, it's just like even for, you know, me, it's like already I cannot even open them. Sometimes I just like, I want to be distant from the stuff. But like for, you know, a neurodiverse person, it might be like, you know, literally traumatizing experience. So, and also like, you know, that bullying and, you know, tech does kind of like enables a lot of good stuff in the society, but it also enables a lot of bad actors to do even worse things. So we just need to remember that, and we need to be careful. You know, even unintended consequences sometimes lead to, you know, some horrible things in society. So we should be careful, I think. So yeah, thank you actually for making this point.
Yeah, super important. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, everyone. As I said at the start, this is my favorite kind of event, because I can just be like, tell me all these things. And I just love I would love to use a different word, but I can't think of one, the diversity of the work that everyone's doing, and how there are so many things left for us to do as human beings in the world to make the world a better place. And we all have individual passions and join into group passions to work in all kinds of different areas, and all of those are important. So thank you all so much for coming on and sharing with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Zoe.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you all.
Likewise.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Got some thinking to do.
Nice meeting all. Bye.
Cheerio.
Thank you.